Video.
Hello, everybody. It's Alan here, and sorry I couldn't join you in person for today's final town hall of 2025. I've been with my family on the East Coast, and I'm flying back to Los Angeles at the time of the town hall on Sunday. So I thought I'd just send a little end of year message looking back at 2025 and looking forward to 2026. And even before I sort of launch into saying a few things about the state of the world in 2025 as it was in 2026, and maybe also PDA and how PDA fits into all of everything. I thought I'd actually give a sort of summary capsulation of how I see American politics right now, and then we'll just talk a little bit about details from 2025, looking forward to 26 and slotting PDA into it, though it might be hard to not imagine I'm already thinking about how PDA fits into all of this as I say what I'm about to start with. And that is that it's my assessment that we're in a very, very distinctive and fraught political moment in American history, and of course in global history as well. To put it in the framework broadly as global history, look, we've seen some highly traumatic things happen around the world in recent years. Obviously, the catastrophe of what transpired in Gaza, where we probably had uh, that sort of high-tech slaughter of a population shared through video technology as readily as any in human history. You know, there just simply were not instantaneous video reports of the firebombing of Tokyo or of Hiroshima, et cetera. So this was horrible and highly traumatic, and especially traumatic given the United States' position in support of the escalations of violence that continued to come from the Israelis against the people in Gaza, the horrors of the war in Ukraine and elsewhere. But I do think, while all of that is truly horrific and cannot be downplayed, and plays into a kind of more very moral dark space in which humanity finds itself at this moment, the threat to the American constitutional democracy is as grave a crisis as I think any that we've seen in our lifetimes in history. You'd probably have to go back to the end of World War II, so while World War II was still transpiring, to see something that was so threatening for what I think animates the great sort of sense of hope and possibility that has been a part of world history, you know, since one could say since the American Revolution. One could go back to earlier sort of progressive reforms and other eras and other places, but in terms of the historical trajectory that's led up to the present, it's true that 250 years ago, with all of its failings and all of its atrocities that underlay it, the United States of America established the notion of democratic governance, and it's the victory of the American Revolution confirmed the establishment of the notion of democratic governance, which held forth the idea that every person would have a say in their own political and social destiny, and it wouldn't just be a matter of elites making those decisions for them. And that, of course, conception spread and was strengthened across the interceding 250 years. And we arrive at the second term of Donald Trump's presidency, and I think more than any time, with the exception of the Civil War, within this country, that notion is now seriously um, uh, at risk of collapsing. And I think this is of the utmost global historical relevance for all of our lives and the way that we live. And for those of us who are Americans, the very air that we breathe is really almost possibly shifting such that the way that we've seen the world and the possibilities we've always understood to be there for all of its failings and increased failings of the system of democracy we've had in the United States, because there's no doubt that big money and big money's influence and buying of elections has only escalated in recent decades. The idea that it would be just sort of stripped asunder and an authoritarianism would be established was really unthinkable until very recently. And now we watched it in many respects transpiring in front of our eyes. And that's what's at play politically in the United States right now. And before looking back at the ways that that clearly has been the case in 2025 and the ways in which will be further under threat in 2026, my analysis of where we are then and how we get out of this mess still very much pertains to how we got here over the past, say, half century, which is that there's been incredible public dissatisfaction with the political status quo among the majority of the population. And the people who have benefited over the past 5 decades leading up to the present have increasingly been the very, very wealthy, and even the very wealthiest of the very wealthy, such that they have become so powerful that they have now aligned themselves with this autocratic figure of Donald Trump to basically form a bond in which they're just going to strip and destroy the capacity of the general population to interfere with how this small select group of Americans runs and controls all of American society. And so you have the establishment effectively of a de facto oligarchy and an oligarchy in the making, which, depending on the particular ruling, is being pushed forward by the right-wing Supreme Court. And with the pliant Congress, you have the concentration of power inside the executive branch under Donald Trump, with the support of the most powerful oligarchs the country has seen probably ever in our history. I think it now supersedes. For many reasons, I think the tech digital oligarchs supersede the power even of the robber barons of the 1890s, because when you're controlling that level of information and the impact of that information in people's minds, it's even more powerful than what existed at that time. So we have a very, very dangerous concentration of power here. And I think that the only way that democracy has a real shot at rebounding, we can have some short-term victories, and we have to achieve those short-term victories against this oligarchic thrust. But I think the American public is going to be dissatisfied with the results of our political system until we revive an idea, and it's a somewhat banal idea, but let's just keep it simple here for the time being, of the American dream, that is accessible to the average household. And by that, I mean that people can not only become increasingly prosperous with each generation, but they can attain a level of prosperity from just baseline participation of playing by the rules inside the society, and that makes them readily accessible and attainable is the American dream. So, of course, the great signifier of this is home ownership and a degree of economic, if not total independence, a sense of control and confident control over the manner in which one has a working life, that one has, vacation time, time to raise a family, the resources to raise a family, the resources to have vacation time and leisure time, and to, be able to pass on this vision of greater prosperity and greater sense of economic control over one's own life within a just context, can be handed on to the next generation. And the faith in that has completely collapsed because the reality of that is all but completely collapsed, as we know. Home ownership is just average homeowner right now. New homeowners like in their late 50s. It used to be in their 30s. So it's basically unattainable until very late in life. In fact, one of the few ways in which Americans finally arrive at some level of prosperity, even within range of the previous generations, when they inherit the wealth of the previous generation. And that people live longer now. That happens later and later. We have incredible concentration of wealth, by the way, in the hands of older Americans, and yet many older Americans are living lives of severe desperation in their poverty. And we have not only do we have the loss of faith for the middle class to attain the American dream, we have an increasing number of Americans who are living at or near poverty, where poverty is demarcated very low. So where that leaves us, folks, in 2025 is we have a situation in which the American public, to really rebuild faith in democracy, we have to have a political formation that clearly outlines a manner in which that is reattainable for the American people. That it's not just a bunch of band-aids that are put onto a status quo ante, which is unsatisfactory and has been for decades for the majority of the American public. And with that, I think it's fair to say the only political formation that promises that are currently progressive Democrats. And you have basically three political formations vying for political control in the country. You have the authoritarian far right anti-democrats who are going to just go for this oligarchic strongman and eviscerate democracy. And it's just going to take a few more volleys of them winning and being a competitive political formation and holding power that democracy will be gone and no longer attainable. So this is urgent. Then we have the moderate Democrats and a few moderate Republicans wherever they may be left. Um, and unfortunately, they represent a status quo ante, which can be compelling at a moment to a large portion of the population, which says, don't worry about being perfect. We just got to defeat these guys. But here's the problem: if they get back into power with each iteration that they win, say, the presidency and maybe a slight majority in the Senate and the House, and then don't do anything to dramatically transform the social order, and it returns back to this unsatisfactory status quo, undoubtedly because of the wounds done to it by Trump at an even lesser level than it was previously, the public isn't going to settle for that. And so we're basically at a situation where we on the progressive left, and this is the main message I want to convey to everybody at this moment in our history, we on the progressive left, yes, we have to maintain a
Was
political
I
alliance with
unmuted just
moderate
now?
Democrats because it is all important that we do win in November 2026. We have to have that kind of popular front and win a massive majority. And then we have to win a big majority in 2028. But by 2028, which is a presidential election, therefore distinctive from 2026, where there'll be one primary leader of the party, we have to make sure that the politics put forward by the Democratic Party are roughly the politics that PDA advocates for. We need a politics that advocates for a new economic social order, which is really an older economic social order, except now available to all of the population, no longer shedding all of its any legacy of its racism has to be completely gone. Okay. And this has to be available to all of the population. And it is basically a social contract put forward by FDR, put forward by social democratic countries across Western Europe and the rest of the world where it was applied, because it's the only proven mechanism for achieving a broadly prosperous middle class society in a technological, industrialized capitalist context. It's the only proven way to do it, and we have to return to it. Now, of course, there have to be adjustments. Building off of where the world was in 1933 and building off of where the world is in 2025 are very different. In fact, you can just have to look at the structure of family and labor and who's in the workforce to realize there are very different needs. Roosevelt had to concentrate on certain things, making agriculture, subsidized and whole in a way when it had completely collapsed. Restructuring the banking system. Well, our particular focus will be about things like childcare and universal health care and housing costs and the cost of higher education. All of these things need to be clearly rectified and put into a framework that roughly fits with the model of the time, absolutely foregrounding the needs of poor, working, and middle class Americans. Nothing else will work. So we on the progressive left, we at PDA, as 2025 comes to an end, as we look back on a year where there was the horrors in Gaza, where there are these horrible occupations and brutalization of hardworking, working class families, immigrants to this country. Their mistreatment is unlike anything we've seen in terms of its absolutely just, non-judicial application of fascist power within the domestic United States. These horror shows of 2025, they have to end by us winning in 2026. So we have to simultaneously say to our fellow Democrats, yes, we're going to be with you because you're going to be on the ballot in November 2026 if we are unable to defeat them in primaries. And we're going to support you. But we're going to support you to win those elections so that we can stop the horror shows that are going on, or try to staunch them as best as we can, even though the Trump administration will still be there for another 2+ years, right? But we have to staunch those as much as we can at the same time as we look our fellow Democrats in the eye and say, no, your neoliberal system has failed. It has failed our democracy. There's only one response to the moment that will be adequate to revitalize democracy and to make it stronger than ever with these victories, just like democracy was stronger than ever in the years following the Rooseveltian redistribution of wealth that came about after the Great Depression, after World War II, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, through the civil rights movement. We have to take that, make it even better. We can do that. We know how to do it. We have the model from before. We know the issues that have to be addressed. And that's where we are at this point. So I have now hit my mark here for the length I wanted to go on. I hope I'm clear. I could point to the things we need to focus on for 2026. We know what they are. We need to be there in the primaries. We need to have our voices heard. We also have to proceed to try to staunch some of the greatest risks of the moment. Of course, we have to be out supporting immigrant communities across the United States. We have to call for international law internationally. We have to support the Constitution and make sure the Democratic Party stands up for supporting the Constitution. Whichever Republicans we can pull away to support the Constitution to pretty much achieve defeats for the Trump administration wherever we can, because they are the enemies of democracy. Then that means they are the enemies of every one of you watching this. They do not want you to have any control over your life. They want to make all the decisions for you and take that power away from you. They oppose democracy. We are Democrats with a small d, and we're progressive Democrats with a big D. And we have the right answers for this society going forward. So let everyone you know about Progressive Democrats of America. We're going to build up a great list of progressive Democrats to support in the primaries. We're going to push forward to win those primaries through the long primary season. It's all spread out across the calendar in 2026 through to early September. And then we're going to have a resounding victory in unity and unison. After the primaries are over, we are going to be in unity with the entirety of the Democratic Party, because we have to be. That's what history demands of us. We have to be the grown-ups in the room who support that. And that's what we're going to do in 2026. So I apologize for going on a little bit long, but hey, back to you, William and Donna and Nina Turner, if you're here today. Love you, Nina, so much. And love you all. And it's an honor to work alongside all of you. So let's make 2026 the greatest year yet in the history of Progressive Democrats of America. And thank you for your perseverance through a very, very difficult and trying year. Onwards. Thank you.